There is Bill. There is Frank. There is Bill. Starting again, because I think you might have missed the first one. There's Bill. There's Frank. There's Eugene. There's Donna. There's Brian. There's Hank. There's Andrew. There's Webb. Webb Bixby. On time today. Good to see you, Webb. Did I say Frank? I did say Frank. There's Leah. Hello, Leah. And did I say John? There is also John. All right. I think it was Bill yesterday who said, I say every day that I don't know how this is going to go. Today I feel good about how it's going to go. So we'll see what happens. Come along, everyone. Let us play our game. Points to almost everyone and a few thoughts on a few days with HomePod Mini. It is Friday, the 20th of November, 2020, and this is macOS Ken Live. Don't you know it feels good? Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you into this edition of macOS Ken Live, which I have no right to feel like I'm going to have fun with this show. Except there's something about it that is, I don't know, it cranks my motor. It turns my gears. It does, if those things are good, then that's what it does. Second half of the show, we're going to talk about changes in behavior that have been prompted by my HomePod Mini. And then some things are still exactly as they were. Problems I've been fighting for years. I am, of course, talking about sleeping through my alarm. We'll get to that in the second half of the show. First half of the show, though, there was a Washington Post piece that there's no reason you should feel good about it. And yet there's something about it that it's just, I spend all this time reading Apple News and looking at Apple News. And this is not a fun story. And yet I am appreciative of almost everybody in this story. The headline, Apple is lobbying against a bill aimed at stopping forced labor in China. And you can see now why I said there's no reason I should feel good about anything that we're going to talk about today. And yet, here we are. Apple lobbyists are trying to weaken a new law aimed at preventing forced labor in China, says the Washington Post. That is according to two congressional staffers familiar with the matter, highlighting the clash between its business imperatives and its official stance on human rights. Well, maybe. We don't know, which is kind of what's exciting about this. I know this sounds crazy that I'm excited about this, but you've heard me get really excited about stories that shouldn't be exciting at all before. Here's what we know about the law. The Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act would require U.S. companies to guarantee that they do not use imprisoned or coerced workers from the predominantly Muslim region of Xinjiang, where academic researchers estimate the Chinese government has placed more than 1 million people into internment camps. Apple is heavily dependent on Chinese manufacturing, as we of course know, and human rights reports have identified instances in which alleged forced Uyghur labor has been used in Apple's supply chain. We're not to the fun part yet. The staffers, who spoke on condition of anonymity because the talks with the company took place in private meetings, said Apple is one of many U.S. companies that oppose the bill as it's written. They declined to discuss details on the specific provisions Apple was trying to knock down or change because they feared providing that knowledge would identify them to Apple, but they both characterized Apple's effort as an attempt to water down this bill. But we don't know which part they're trying to water down. And this is where this whole thing gets really fun to me. This is, I don't want to say masterclass, but man, everybody in here gets points. Everybody in this story gets points. I got to give points to the Washington Post because several companies are known to be lobbying against this initiative, right? Including Coca-Cola, Costco, and Patagonia, the outerwear people, right? I don't know if they make underwear, but I know they make outerwear. It would really look bad for them to be using forced labor. I mean, it's bad for anybody too, but it would look really bad for them. But you got to give points to the Washington Post because if they had said, many companies are lobbying this, I would have missed that article. We all would have missed that article. If they say Apple is, points to them because they made me click. No, less cynically, points to them because in clicking it, I actually read the piece. I read the whole story. Most people aren't going to, Most people are going to read the first couple of paragraphs and it's going to end up looking bad for Apple. But if you read the whole article, I know I've read about the Uyghurs before. I want to say it was Labor Day of 2018. I actually did 15 minutes about forced labor and the Uyghurs and the Chinese supply chain, not Apple's supply chain, but just forced labor in China on Mac OS Ken. But, this recapped it and reminded me of a bunch of stuff I had forgotten. Xinjiang, which borders Pakistan and Afghanistan, was conquered by China in the 1700s, and the Turkic Muslims who live there have long fought against Chinese rule. But in recent years, the Chinese government has been cracking down on Muslims, aided by advanced surveillance technology such as artificial intelligence and facial recognition and digital iron grip that has overwhelmed the population. That part is terrible. And that part is not a part that we hear very often. And it's also amazing that we're talking about a battle that's been going on for close to 300 years, except it's been, what you call it, a Cold War? I mean, it's not even, I don't even know what you would call that. They do go on to talk about the moving of Uyghurs from one part of the country to another, and they talk about the difficulty of tracking those movements, and they talk about the Chinese government's protestations. China, by the way, gets no points in any of this. They're the one, like if you hear me talk about them in this and say points to everybody, China not included. Got to get points to the AFL-CIO. Kathy Feingold, director of the International Department for the AFL-CIO, which has supported this bill, says what Apple would like is we all just sit and talk and not have any real consequences. They're shocked because it's the first time where there could be some actual effective enforceability. Why do I give her points? Because I've never heard of her before. I didn't know the AFL-CIO was supporting this bill. I didn't even know this bill existed. And, if she's willing to say something incendiary about Apple, she gets into the article. So good for her as well. Now, here's the thing. We do know that Apple is lobbying this. You might think I was going to say, we don't even know if this is true. We know this is true. We know Apple is lobbying this bill. We don't know that Apple is lobbying against the bill. We know that Apple is lobbying it. It would not surprise me at all if they are lobbying the bill as it's written, but I can't imagine they're saying, so, let us keep using forced labor because, Apple and their stance on forced labor. First of all, really quickly, let me tell you how we know that Apple's doing it. It's because their lobbying firm said so. Fierce Government Relations is the name of the lobbying firm. They disclosed that they were lobbying on the bill on behalf of Apple in a disclosure form that was first reported by The Information. However, the form didn't say whether Apple was for or against the bill or whether it wanted to modify it in any way. Lobbying disclosure forms don't require that information. And Fierce Government Relations referred the Washington Post to Apple's public relations team. And of course, you go to them and they say, we hate forced labor, because they do. I mean, if they're to be believed, which is an interesting question, it would be reprehensible to think that they've been lying about that the whole time. That is their stated stance. Let's go really quickly to what Apple might be lobbying before we get to the part where Apple got to say, you know us, we hate forced labor. The new bill would make it more difficult for U.S. companies to ignore abuses taking place in China and give U.S. authorities the power to enforce the law. One provision in the bill requires public companies to certify to the Securities and Exchange Commission that their products are not made using forced labor from Xinjiang. If companies are found to have used forced labor from the region, they could be prosecuted for securities violations. Okay, that's severe. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but there is a part in this article where they talk about moving 560 people from one part of China to another. I want to say they moved them to iPhone City. What is that? That's Zhengzhou. I want to say they moved them from the area in question over by Pakistan and Afghanistan over to Zhengzhou, which is all the way on the other side of China, which, by the way, has 1 billion people in it. And we're talking about 560 people. And I'm not saying it's not serious that those 560 people are being moved. It's abhorrent. It's terrible. They should not be forced to do anything because of what they believe, just like nobody should be forced to do anything because of who they love or the color of their skin or any of those things. That's all terrible, okay? You're talking about a billion people, and you're talking about Apple having to keep track of 560 people or people in just like a factory of a million people. iPhone City has a million people working in it. If there are actually securities violations because China did something that Apple didn't know that China did, and it comes to light later, I can see Apple saying, you know what? I would kind of like it if we pulled that part back a tiny bit, because can I remind you, we're talking about a billion people, which is not to say that it's not to be taken seriously, which is not to say that Apple shouldn't do everything it can. But then you come to the part where Apple says, we're doing. Can anybody ever say they're doing everything they can? I don't know. A company spokesperson did say, though, that earlier this year, Apple conducted a detailed investigation with their suppliers in China and found no evidence of forced labor on Apple production lines, and they're continuing to monitor this closely. That's what they can do. They could also, I don't know, they could start something as big as Free Tibet. I mean, they could start something as big as, some of the movements that we all remember from days past. Would it go well? Fascinating thing. This measure actually passed the House of Representatives with a vote of 400 something to 3. So there is bipartisan support for this bill. Then you kind of have to dig around into the whole. Earlier this summer, both Democrats and Republicans saw absolutely no reason to not go after tech. They actually thought there were going to be political points in it for them to do that. Now, the other interesting thing is this bill mostly tackles textiles, which explains why Patagonia is involved in it. This bill is mostly aimed at the textiles industry, not at tech. But there is some concern that this is happening some in tech, and maybe that's part of the problem as well. Maybe that's why Apple is like, look, if 500 people got moved to iPhone City and we didn't know about that, or no, maybe they're saying if we found out about that, if we knew it, we would put the kibosh on it immediately. Maybe this bill that is supposed to be aimed at textiles should be aimed at textiles. Maybe what Apple is saying. I don't know, because we don't know, because we haven't seen. What China is doing, I kind of want to say what China is allegedly doing, but we've been hearing this for years now, which doesn't make it true. But yeah, come on. What China is said to be doing, this is from the Post, with an estimated 1 million to 2 million people placed in camps, because they're placing them in camps. They're placing them in work camps. And China says they're not work camps, they're vocational education centers, which somehow also makes them lose their religion somewhere along the way. With an estimated 1 million to 2 million people placed in camps, human rights groups have called the situation in Xinjiang a cultural genocide. Some of those who graduate, in quotes, who graduate from the camps are renouncing Islam and learning to speak fluent Mandarin, and they've been moved to factories in Xinjiang and surrounding regions. China's government has disputed the characterization of the program as camps, saying they are vocational training centers to reform minor criminals. Under heavy international pressure, officials declared that the program ended in December of last year, saying all students had successfully graduated. Some of the centers have been confirmed to be vacated, though some overseas Uyghurs have said that relatives remain detained or missing. So no points for China, obviously. The reality of all that is horrid. The reality of all that is horrible. And I feel kind of bad that I love this story. I don't love what's happening. I love the way this story was put together. It gives you a lot to think about, and it educates, and I appreciate that. Kind of like the fact that Congress might actually be doing something about it as well. My concern is the thing that Apple is, lobbying is Congress doing the thing that Congress does when it comes to, well, generally speaking, tech. Because I keep forgetting this is not a tech story. This is a corporation story. This is Patagonia, Coca-Cola, Costco. I'm assuming there are others. My concern is, that they're going in with a hammer where forceps might be better. We'll find out. Or we won't, because Congress, the House can do whatever it wants right now. The House can do whatever the heck it wants. They can declare it Funny Hat Day, and it wouldn't matter because the Senate is all about one thing now, and that's whatever amuses one guy currently. So I don't know. I hope this actually has the power to do something for the Uyghurs. I really do. And if it does have the power to do something for the Uyghurs in a fair way, in a way that doesn't, carpet bomb everybody, I hope it happens. And it'll be a fascinating story to keep watching. Anyway, I think so. You want to talk about HomePod? I want to talk about HomePod. We'll do that in just a moment. But first, I think there's something I'm supposed to remind you. This is the part of the show where I'm supposed to tell you about other stuff that I do. But what are you doing this weekend? I'm not going to ask you to do anything for me. I have 2 Kraus projects this weekend that I never take time to do. So I guess here, do this for you. Just, something that you've been putting off because you're too busy or whatever. Take an hour. I'm making a journal and I'm making a mask because I hate all the masks that I bought. I'm making a pretty mask, which I will show you next week. And that will force me to make the mask this week. So there you go. Have fun. There, I guess that's what I want to say. Have fun this weekend, at least a little bit, or try to, in hashtag these uncertain times. Right. Let's talk about HomePod Mini. And I will start this with a joke. Well, it's a riddle. But you know how people say riddles are jokes and all that stuff? Here's the riddle. What do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire? Frostbite. See, it's funny because the snowman and the vampire, and he bites. Yeah, that is a Siri joke, and I know that's a Siri joke because the 10-year-old in the house loves asking Siri for jokes. I personally get a little tired of it after a while, but it's funny. It's made me consider things about technology and comedy and how we learn the things we learn and why we say we don't like the things we do. The 10-year-old in the house keeps asking Siri specifically for puns. Keeps asking Siri specifically for puns. And I think Siri's just telling the same jokes, but most of Siri's jokes are punny. And the thing is, Siri will, pop out with one of these jokes with a pun. The 10-year-old will be like, I hate it, but smiling the whole time. And it's like, well, quit asking for it then. And then she'll immediately ask it for another pun. So that to me has actually been one of the most interesting things is watching somebody who's not familiar with that technology get comfortable with that technology. Now she's got an iPhone that's been passed down and passed down and passed down, so she's already hip to asking Siri things. How many days until Christmas? And just sort of general knowledge questions that a 10-year-old might want to know, right? But she's not used to just calling out into the air to do that. And she's also not used to just calling out into the air for music. What's been really neat, and this is not a HomePod Mini thing. It's only a HomePod Mini thing because I've been hoarding my HomePod. The HomePod has been in the bedroom where the 10-year-old doesn't hang out. And so, I've had HomePod, but I don't ask it much. I will occasionally ask it to play music, but the problem is because I'm always writing for Mac OS Ken, I can't really listen to anything with words, and pretty soon I just sort of forget about the music thing. So move the big HomePod downstairs, and now I've got the HomePod Mini upstairs. And so already what the HomePod Mini has done for me is it's let me sort of expand that environment. I know I talked, I believe, on this show about my excitement about sort of moving more into pervasive computing. I'm not huge into Internet of Things, which I know HomePod is, but like I don't have a web connected toaster. I don't need one. I wanted one for a while. You know those picture frames where you can put pictures in them and they change every now and then. And then I think something came out that one of them was sending all the pictures back to China. And I thought, well, maybe I don't need that then. I'm not huge into the Internet of Things, but I am huge into the idea of pervasive computing. And I know the distinction there is subtle, I think what the distinction there is I don't just want a bunch of things connected to the internet laying around the house and me forgetting about them. I do, however, want to be able just to, speak into the air, as did Captain Picard, and say, "Hey, how many days till Christmas?" Or play me whatever. The other thing is just my personal thing. I'm getting my music into other people's heads now, which is great because they get their music stuck in my head all the time. I won't tell you what they're listening to, but I kind of like the idea that, if I tried to sit down with, well, anybody, those friends who say you've got to listen to this band. I'll tell you, for me, you telling me I've got to listen to this band is pretty much a guarantee that I'm never going to listen to that band. I distinctly remember the day that somebody introduced me to They Might Be Giants. I was 18 years old. It was in high school. And my friend Jay said, "You have to listen to this." And I fought him. I fought him for like 5 minutes. And he just kept telling me, "No, you have to listen." And finally, he was so persistent that I did. And They Might Be Giants is one of my favorite bands of all time. I came this close, though, to never knowing about They Might Be Giants because he said, "You have to listen." What I love about having the HomePod downstairs is I can just sort of play They Might Be Giants and people will get into it, as opposed to me trying to tell a 10-year-old, "No, really, I think you'll like it." It's almost a guarantee that that's never going to happen. As far as the HomePod Mini itself, the sound is good. If you go from one room with a HomePod to another room with a HomePod Mini, you are going to notice a bit of difference as far as the bass. I mean, you just are, because the HomePod is it's all about that bass. What can I say? I nearly called them, can't remember if I told you this. I name all my devices. I nearly called them Fat Man and Little Boy, but I didn't like the idea of, nuclear weapons laying around the house. So instead, I called them Batman and Robin. Batman now lives in the kitchen. Robin now lives in the bedroom. Anyway, sounds great. Not quite as bassy if you go straight from one to the other, but otherwise it's perfect. The one failing that I have is it responds to what you say. So when it starts playing music for me to wake up, I'm pretty sure that I am telling it in my sleep to stop the music because I don't remember my HomePod going off at all today. I'm sure it did. I don't remember it. But the more I think about it, I think, oh, yeah, I might have told it to shut up. I didn't say shut up, of course, but anyway, so I'm liking it. The other thing I like about it, and it goes to some of the stuff that we were talking about yesterday, I guess, as far as Apple and its stance on user privacy. I like the fact that if I ask HomePod something, that's between me and HomePod, which means it's between me and Apple. And yes, I know there is a possibility that somebody else is listening to it because I have signed up to say, "Sure, analyze these recordings." What I like is the fact that I could say, "No, don't analyze my recordings. That's just between me and Apple servers and nobody else." Because I want HomePod to get better, because I want the pervasive computing thing to get better. So I've gone ahead and said, "Yeah, you can listen to about that much of my, recording." And for people only hearing the audio podcast, I'm holding my thumb and forefinger really close together. You can listen to that much of what I'm saying because I want this thing to get better. And Apple has told me long enough that they don't care about my personal information, that I trust them and I believe them, and I'll do that thing. So really liking it. If a smart speaker is something that you've been considering but have been worried about the, you know, privacy implications of something that comes from Amazon or from Google, but you didn't want to spend $300, $200, $250, however much original HomePod was, I would say the HomePod Mini is worth checking out. I do know now that those other companies have come out with higher end devices at a lower price. I still worry about the privacy stuff. So if you're cool spending $100, you will at the very least have a good speaker that can just play for you almost anything you want almost as soon as you think of it, which, is still amazing. Every now and then I think, that is definitely one of those things that shows that we live in the future. So there we go. Oh, darn it. I had feedback, but I forgot to put it down because somebody actually wrote to me about their HomePod Mini as well, and I wanted to be sure to share that with you. Hold on. Let me find it. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Eugene, who I think might be in the chat room, I'm not sure, wrote in to say, "Got my HomePod Mini. tasteful, space gray today. Flawless setup and sounds great, just like everyone else seems to be saying. Yeah, I haven't heard anything bad about it yet. Then again, I mean, they've had the HomePod out there for a couple of years, so they shouldn't have the OS down. The question was just, was this teeny tiny little thing going to sound as good as a HomePod? And no, but almost. $99. It's not a bad deal at all, I think. Right. So I think that's going to do it. I said I was going to do the craft stuff over the weekend. One of them I'm actually going to do probably in the next hour and a half. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. Before I do that, though, I'm going to turn this into an audio podcast. And before I do that, I'm going to go into the chat room and talk to the people who are here live. If you're only catching the audio thing, or if you're catching a replay on YouTube, I will remind you, this is a thing that we do Monday through Friday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll only be doing 3 days next week because, of course, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. But normally it's Monday through Friday. And yeah, if you haven't joined us for the live thing, when it's live, I do hope you will. As I say, if you're in the chat room, please stick around. I'll be there momentarily. Everybody else, talk to you soon. Let me stop my recording. Let me get my glasses. Why won't you people let me do these things? I know you're not stopping me. Do. Right. Let me see who's saying what. Did I miss saying hello to anybody? If I did, I apologize. Hello. Hey, there's Eugene talking about his HomePod Mini. Do. Sorry, I'm just reading what people are saying. It looks like Frank and Bill are talking about the Mac Pro that Bill ordered and that Frank wants. Be careful, because Frank's wily. He might try to intercept it, Bill. Just don't give him too much personal information. That's all I'm saying. If you're missing the USB-C charger on your home, oh yeah, because it ships with one of those, doesn't it? That's right. I forgot about that. Kind of funny, because the original HomePod just plugs in. Just got a plug, doesn't have an adapter. Yeah, Eugene talked about that too. I was surprised that it was powered by a fixed USB-C cable. Not sure why I was surprised, but I was. Replaceable power cord. That's interesting. Yeah, a lot of people complained about the fact that the power cord isn't replaceable. I don't even remember. Does the one from the HomePod come out? I don't think it does. The original HomePod. It's a long cable, though. This one is long enough. And of course, you go to Amazon or whatever, get an extension. Or move to a place with more electrical outlets. Eugene asked a good question. What does Coca-Cola need slave labor in China for? Well, hopefully nobody needs slave labor, and hopefully nobody is willingly participating in that. Hopefully everybody's being duped. And I know everybody can't be being duped. If we ever find out that Apple is being duped on the whole Uyghur thing, knowingly, I might quit. Or I might just, stay and hold their feet to the fire forever and ever and ever. Bill, I don't have a 10-year-old. I'm in a living situation that includes a 10-year-old. Trying not to say much more, because I don't know. Maybe we'll get drunk on Thanksgiving and I'll tell you all about everything in my personal life. Captain Picard spoke into the air about a military ship, not about his apartment. Just saying. Well, yeah. But by that rationale, we shouldn't have iPads because they also use the pads on the quasi-military ship. It was actually a vessel of exploration, you know. Ah, aboard, he meant, not about. See, I just thought you were doing the British thing. Moving about the house, as it were. Not British, but you get the idea. Frank Petrie says if you say something rude to Siri, it will respond that it doesn't respond to that kind of language. Yeah, I want to say that I actually, in a particular moment of peak several years ago, I intentionally activated Siri and said something rude to it. And it actually responded in a way that made me feel like it was a tiny bit hurt, which made me feel a tiny bit bad. I don't understand artificial intelligence. I don't understand systems like these exactly. I do believe, though, um, the more decent we are to them, the more respectful we are to them, even if there is no learning on the part of the AI or machine learning that you're talking about, even if they're not getting that you're being nice or you're being mean, the people who are monitoring will get the sense that you're being nice or being mean. Feels like if we started to treat all of these things well, and I don't mean with deference, but I mean if we started treating them like you would treat your, like your neighbor if you liked them or your grandma or whoever, you started saying please and thank you, they might actually the companies that engineer them might make them a tiny bit more pleasant, which would make the world a tiny bit more pleasant, says the hippie. I'm the hippie, by the way. Roger says he does not enjoy the sound of a subwoofer. I suppose the music I listen to wasn't written for modern speaker systems. I don't even know what a subwoofer does. See, that's the thing. It's easy to like, it's like I talked about last week about, the M1 when, we were talking about the fact that we didn't have a lot of specs, that we didn't have a lot of, like hard speed numbers. And I was just like, you tell me it's, twice as fast. I'm like, okay, that's good. If it sounds good to me, it sounds good to me. I don't know what a subwoofer does, honestly. Is that the thing that adds the bass? I would think that would be a bass thing or something. John McGee says everything unplugs if you have the right tools. Like the way you're thinking, sir. $99 speaker, says Frank. $325 electrician to move the outlet. Extension cords are cheap. And you can just string them all together. That's wrong. I'm kidding when I say that. I mean, you can. It's a horrible idea. Where do I send the alcohol for Thanksgiving? Oh, don't worry, Webb. I'm fine. Thank you. Oh, I'm very excited actually. I got I bought the ingredients for my holiday cocktail. I have a holiday cocktail that I will share with you sometime if you want. Not the cocktail, but the recipe. There's no recipe to it really, and I have a feeling it's like not anything that people should get excited about, but I'm very excited. So that's starting day after Thanksgiving, I think. Nice. All right, everybody. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go turn this into a show, like I said, and then I'm gonna go do some crafting. I think might go for a walk actually, and then do some crafting because you need to know everything I'm up to. Um, Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll do a short week next week, as I said. That is both for macOS Ken and for macOS Ken Live. In a few minutes, will be a full week, or should be a full week. So we'll be back here Monday. Oh wait, with a single subwoofer, you don't get the channel separation in the bottom end of stereo music. Yeah, you see, I don't know what that means. It sounds good to me, and so that's that's kind of where I stop, I'm afraid, Roger. But thank you very much for answering. I appreciate it. Yeah, Webb Bixby gets the last word. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, everyone. Go wash your hands. Webb Bixby for the win. He gets points. The points that could have gone to China if they'd been decent, those points go to Webb. Right. You guys take care. We'll talk to you soon.